The sky was painted in a soft golden hue as dawn broke over the Pacific. The waves shimmered beneath the morning sun, gentle and calm, a deceptive calm before history's storm. Cutting through those quiet waters was a small but proud escort carrier, USS Gambier Bay, CVE-73. She wasn't the largest, nor the strongest, but she carried something far greater, courage that would echo through time. It was October 1944. The location, the Battle of Leyte Gulf, near the Philippines, one of the largest naval battles ever fought. The American fleet was pushing hard to liberate the Philippines from Japan's grasp. Among the many warships sailing under the stars and stripes was Gambier Bay, a ship built not for glory but for duty, an escort carrier, designed to protect and support the main fleet, to launch aircraft, supply them, and guard the rear lines. She wasn't meant for frontline combat. But fate had other plans. That morning, the crew of Gambier Bay was in good spirits. The sea was calm, the horizon endless. Pilots were preparing their planes, sailors were cleaning decks, and somewhere below, laughter echoed in the mess hall. None of them could imagine that within hours, the very sea beneath them would become their grave. At 6:45 a.m., the ship's radar suddenly picked up large, fast-moving objects. Confusion rippled through the bridge. Could it be friendly ships? Someone asked. But the reality soon became terrifyingly clear: it wasn't an American fleet. It was the Japanese center force, led by the monstrous battleship Yamato, the largest warship ever built, with 9 18-inch guns capable of tearing apart any ship in a single hit. Admiral Clifton Sprague, commanding the small task unit known as Taffy 3, looked through his binoculars and felt his heart sink. Against him stood an armada of Japanese battleships and cruisers. His own group, just a handful of escort carriers, destroyers, and destroyer escorts, ships that weren't even meant to fight such giants. It was David versus a dozen Goliaths. Aboard Gambier Bay, Captain Hugh Goodwin got the report. He didn't hesitate. His voice rang through the intercom: "Enemy fleet approaching. Launch all aircraft immediately. Every plane we have. Get 'em up there now." Pilots sprinted to their planes. The flight deck roared to life. One by one, aircraft thundered into the sky, Wildcats and Avengers, their engines screaming as they lifted off. They had little ammunition, limited fuel, and almost no chance of survival. But they went anyway, to fight for their ship, for their crew. At 7:10 a.m., the first shell from Yamato screamed through the air. It landed in the ocean with a deafening explosion, a geyser of water towering higher than the carrier's mast. The sound was like the world splitting open. The crew froze, their hearts pounding. But Captain Goodwin's voice steadied them: "Keep moving. Zigzag. Don't give them a straight shot." Gambier Bay began weaving through the waves, trying to dodge the incoming fire. Her destroyer escorts, USS Johnston, USS Hoyle, and USS Heermann, turned to face the enemy head-on. It was suicide, but they didn't care. They charged into the fight, their torpedoes ready. On Gambier Bay's deck, sailors cheered wildly as they watched those smaller ships charge into the flames. Then the enemy's shells began to find their mark. A massive explosion rocked Gambier Bay's stern. The deck shuddered, lights flickered, and smoke poured from below. A young sailor, Tommy, clutched a fire hose, his hands trembling as he tried to put out the flames. Another man shouted over the roar, "Boilers hit, sir. We're losing pressure." Captain Goodwin replied, his voice calm but firm, "Hold it together, son. We'll make history today." Above them, the sky became a battleground. American planes dived through clouds of anti-aircraft fire, striking Japanese battleships again and again. Some never came back. Their fuel ran out, or they were shot down, but they kept going. They knew they were buying time for their ships below. Then came the hit that sealed Gambier Bay's fate. A shell from the heavy cruiser Chikuma slammed into the engine room. The explosion tore through the hull. Power failed. The ship slowed to a crawl. The Japanese guns zeroed in. Shell after shell struck. Armor plates twisted like paper. Fires spread uncontrollably. The air reeked of oil and burning metal. Crewmen screamed orders through the smoke, dragging the wounded to safety, refusing to give up. Even as flames ate through the decks, the gunners at their stations kept firing. One of them, years later, would recall, "We fired our last shell when the sea was already lapping at our knees." At 8 a.m., Captain Goodwin gave the hardest order of his life: "All hands, prepare to abandon ship. But keep firing until the end." Men rushed to release life rafts. Others helped the injured. Yet, some refused to leave their posts. The sound of shells, fire, and screaming metal filled the air. And through it all, Gambier Bay, wounded, broken, burning, still fought back. Slowly, the list of the ship grew worse. The sea began to rise over the deck. Water poured in from the gaping holes along her side. The guns fell silent one by one. The last few men saluted their captain before jumping into the sea. As the water climbed higher, Captain Goodwin stayed on the bridge. Witnesses later said he was seen standing firm, eyes fixed on the horizon, as if refusing to let go. Then, with a groan that sounded almost human, the USS Gambier Bay rolled onto her side. The Pacific swallowed her whole. Her last breath was a bubble of air rising from the deep, the echo of courage in the heart of chaos. But her story was far from over. The survivors floated amid burning oil and wreckage. The once proud carrier was gone, leaving behind a field of twisted metal, scattered debris, and hundreds of men clinging to life vests in shark-infested waters. The morning sun blazed mercilessly above them. The sea that had once been their home now felt like an endless trap. Some men prayed. Others sang to keep their spirits alive. Many were silent, too exhausted, too heartbroken to speak. From the distance, they could still hear the distant thunder of battle. The destroyers that had fought so bravely, Johnston, Hoyle, and Heermann, were now either sunk or burning. The small group known as Taffy 3 had been torn apart, but their courage had done the impossible. They had made the Japanese fleet retreat. That's right, against all odds, a handful of escort carriers and destroyers had forced back one of the most powerful naval forces in history. The Japanese admiral, believing he was fighting a much larger fleet, had ordered withdrawal. He never realized he was retreating from ships that were practically defenseless. And Sir Gambier Bay, though gone beneath the waves, had achieved victory through her sacrifice. For 2 long days, survivors drifted at sea. Many were wounded, some died from dehydration, others simply closed their eyes and slipped under, too tired to fight anymore. Sharks circled, the nights were long and cold, and the memories of the battle haunted every survivor. One sailor later recalled, "The worst part wasn't the cold or the pain. It was the silence after the storm. The kind that makes you realize your ship isn't coming back." Finally, rescue ships arrived. The exhausted men were pulled aboard, sunburned, dehydrated, some hallucinating. Yet when they were asked what ship they were from, they answered proudly, USS Gambier Bay. Even in defeat, that name carried weight. The Navy listed her as the only American aircraft carrier ever sunk by enemy surface gunfire. But to those who were there, she was more than a casualty, she was a legend. In the years that followed, survivors gathered each year to honor their ship and their fallen friends. They told stories, of Tommy, who kept fighting fires until the deck vanished under him, of the pilots who launched into the sky knowing they'd never return, of Captain Goodwin, whose calm voice carried through the smoke and fire. They remembered the sound of the shells, the courage of the destroyers, and the strange, almost peaceful way their ship disappeared into the sea. Decades later, in 2019, an expedition team discovered her wreck lying upright at the bottom of the Philippine Sea, nearly 7,000 meters deep. Her hull was scarred, her guns silent, but her shape still proud, as if standing guard over the souls who went down with her. The footage showed her name faintly visible, Gambier Bay. It was like the ocean had been keeping her safe all these years. For those who knew her story, it wasn't just a shipwreck. It was a monument to bravery, sacrifice, and the human spirit's refusal to surrender. The ocean had taken her body, but her spirit remained above the waves, carried in the hearts of every sailor who ever whispered her name. And so, even as time moved on, even as generations forgot the names of battles and admirals, one story kept floating, of a small escort carrier that stood against giants, and didn't back down. The story of Gambier Bay reminds us of something eternal, that true heroism doesn't always come from strength or size, but from the courage to keep fighting when defeat seems certain. When the USS Gambier Bay took her last breath, she left behind more than wreckage. She left behind proof that even in the darkest depths, light can shine, and legends can rise. Her final message to history was not one of loss, but of defiance. A whisper across the waves that still says, "We fought, we stood, and we did not fall in vain." Please don't forget subscribe, like, share my channel. Thank